So this will feel like an introductory class, or maybe like a mid studies class of a particular subject, and hopefully that subject is life. But you might feel like it's a philosophy class. But hopefully I don't want anyone to get scared. Mr. Philosophy over there. I don't want anyone to get scared. What I mean by philosophy, what I mean is that, and I was speaking in Jum'ah, and some of you may have been there, I spoke about this word of deen, and how it's often understood as religion. But deen also is, there's lots of different meanings there. One of the ways you could translate deen is way of life. And when we look at philosophies or different ideas, ideologies, these ideologies are also adyan, they are deen, right? Back in the day, people had deens like they were Christianity and Hinduism and other religions. Now the differences are capitalism is a deen. People live for capitalism, right? And there would be other isms out there that are really people live for, they exchange their life for, and they're very sensitive about them as well. And most of the time they don't realize that Disney Channel had groomed them for a long time in these new ideologies that now become their modern religions. So hopefully we'll explore some of those aspects, and we'll see the great way of life that Islam has to offer us in this journey, inshallah. Now, what's the name of this talk? Okay, and what's the next bit after that? No, not the actually bit. Yeah, nice, mashallah. It's not you, it's me. The after love, actually, what do we say? What does it say? Don't remember? No. What does it say? Something about the effects of a post-modern, a post-romantic worldview on ourselves and our relationships. Most of us are not really aware of what I'm referring to when I say post-romantic worldview. So what I'll do is there'll be 3 segments to this class. Hopefully you can follow. Well done on a pen and paper. It's important. You know, I travel the world a lot, so I go to different places, and naturally many security agencies listen very intently to what I say. Luckily, I don't think they see me as much of a threat. But anyway, they have a pen and pad and they record everything that I say, right? And that's why they run the world, right? Because we left our pens and pads at home, but not you guys, mashallah, because you guys have your mobile phones and you'll be making notes, alhamdulillah, right? Yeah, I mean, uncle, not you, you're okay, right? No, you're, oh, mashallah, uncle's ready, huh? Mashallah. But I want you guys to take, at least let this be an introduction to making these notes for yourselves so that you can do follow-ups. There'll be maybe an odd book that I'll reference, but I want you to take really knowledge and this journey seriously. Because when I believe that once we cover this class or this session, you'll realize that it's actually a very, very important subject. Anyway, so we're a little bit short on time already, and I wanted to finish it by Maghrib time. So Bismillah, let's bring in that barakah, inshallah. Okay, so there will be three sections to this. One, I'm going to speak about really a bit of history, okay, and how the context of where we're living in, and then some of the crisis in which we have as the effect of this ideology. So we'll talk about where this ideology came from, the effect of this ideology, and then hopefully towards the end we'll look at what Islam can do in offering us that balance. However, one of the beauties of understanding when you study anything, it's very important to understand that if you can understand the extremes of any concept, you automatically will put yourself in a place of moderation and therefore safety. So in Islam, for example, the way scholars have understood good character, it's not black and white binary of good character and bad character. Rather, good character and virtue is considered to be a balance between 2 extremes. Too much of something becomes bad, and too little of the thing becomes bad. Is that clear? So just keep that in mind as we're going to journey through this, inshallah. And what I want to show you guys is the great amount of insights into our psychology and our mindsets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to offer us. But before we get into our tradition, we really want to understand where the crisis is. Okay. Now, this idea of love, first and foremost, is a very important part of human experience. This idea of love, and this is something that's recognized, obviously, in the Quran and within the Hadith. In fact, you know, a person who's a true believer cannot achieve true belief levels. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. right? That a person is not a true believer. None of you can truly believe until you love for your fellow person what you love for yourself. And this is indicative of really what it means to achieve Iman. But before we get into that, and there's lots of course, different variations, the Prophet ﷺ had also mentioned to us that love your beloved moderately. Love with a balance, right? And he said, perhaps he will become your enemy one day. And hate your enemy moderately as well, right? Perhaps he will become your beloved one day. So it's an important aspect to understand this idea of balance first and foremost, because if you're not balanced in love, it's going to be a problem, isn't it? Yeah. And if you're not balanced in hate, then it's also going to be a problem. You don't want to be too emotional when navigating your emotions. How scary would that be? Anyway, so let's look at the understanding of ideologies first and foremost. Historically, our scholars never shied away with dealing with ideologies. Okay, what we would do is we would look at an ideology. We would look at the foundations of that ideology, first and foremost, the usul, the foundations of it. Then we would look at the effects of it. And that would give us a nice, secure way of dealing with that particular ideology. So, can somebody give me an ideology, preferably with an ism at the end, that I can just speak about for a second? Veganism, yeah? Oh, nice. So veganism, I've not really heard much about veganism. Must be a North American thing. Go ahead. Hedonism. All right, you guys really pushing it today, huh? Okay. Really flexing it, mashallah. Nihilism. Okay, cool, good. Just a few isms out there already. These are just ways in which an ism is indicative of a set of rules which define a particular type of a way of thinking, for example. All right, so it's a science with the ism part blocks you within that, so that becomes the frame in which you perceive and navigate. So any of these isms, Stoicism, capitalism, feminism, all of them, you can look at all of these and immediately the scholars don't become like emotional people in responding to this. We're not going to be, oh, that's nonsense, that's not. We just say, okay, cool, present the idea, let's look at the foundations of it, look at the conclusion. Is the foundations in line with our tradition, and does the conclusion, is it in line with our tradition? Most of the time with isms, it's not the case, right? Just generally as a don't become too attached to your isms. Got that? Most of the isms, because we have an ism, it's called Islamism, right? It's called Islam. We already have a set that we're within, but you can easily do that, all right? And unfortunately, we've fallen into a way that because we don't have those foundations anymore, we take a very emotional response to a lot of these things. So when it comes to TikTok and all these other types of things out there, it's important to really understand where these things are coming from and its effects. We also have then, therefore, due to this insecure nature of knowledge, Muslims have then become overly emotional and overly insecure when dealing with things. And so what happens is, if you ask people now, if you ask Muslims what are Islamic subjects, they probably can't get more than 5. Right? They'll say Tajweed, Seerah, Aqidah, Fiqh. Right? Maybe there's 1 or 2 others out there, yeah. And what about maths? Is maths an Islamic subject? Is medicine an Islamic subject? Right? So we also start to see that and understanding ideologies was also part of our the way in which we studied. So the same. So you can't deal with like an ideology with fiqh, right? You can't deal with an ideology with fiqh because the ideology needs to be engaged. You can, like, how can an idea be? How could you pass like a legal judgment? Right? Practical navigation. That's what legal judgments are. How could you pass that on TikTok? Right? Like, what part of TikTok, if you were to say it's haram, how is it haram? You have to qualify that. You can't just say, or capitalism is haram, feminism is haram, something like that. So we have to have a greater way in which we navigate this. So one of the other things you have to really understand, to understand the landscape of the world we live in, is you have to understand the history of formation of knowledge. So I'm going to take it back a little bit. So this is the bit now. The intro is kind of done. So let's get into the history. So a long time ago, around the 16th century, when the church and Christianity failed most of the modern world, what did they do as a response to that? The separation of the church and state, which is known as secularism or secularization, right? So this idea of separation of the church and state. What happened when they did that was all the truths that the church offered them, now that the church is gone, they had to now rediscover a lot of these truths, existential truths. Where are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? Right? So this led to what was initially first this skepticism that began. The skepticism created a very scared way of seeing things and worried way of seeing things first and foremost. Try to keep a tab of these because I'm going to bring them back into how they affect your relationship with Julie. All right. So skepticism. All right. First and foremost. Yeah. Yeah. So then what had happened was once the skepticism came about, the human being asked itself, well, what can I depend on? Am I a soul? Was there evidence for a soul? Not really. So you had expressions such as cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, meaning I know that this is real, material here. I know that I have a mind. So the two things that I can depend on are matter and my mind. Hence the recognition of most of your therapists, if you have a therapist, is the formation and understanding of your body and your mind. But your therapist doesn't really care about your soul, and the framing that they trained in doesn't consider your soul. I'm not saying leave therapy, by the way. I'm just saying be mindful of the modalities that you're exposing yourself to, because if they don't take care of your spirit, then who takes care of my spirit? Right? So this is called reductionism now. So one of the things that comes from this worldview is it's reductive. So it doesn't see things in a holistic manner. It sees that this doesn't have a soul, nor does it have a mind. It's just material, random table, right? And you're just a mind, I'm just a mind, and we're random selection, and so on. That's what it starts to create. What then happened with this was that Muslims were able to deal with this a lot. But I'm going to just do a quick little overview now. So then what they did was, because the mind now becomes the most important thing, this begins this Enlightenment period, which was also known as the Rationalism period, where everything was processed through the mind. And this is also indicative of your relationship with Julie, okay? Because mentally, people are holding on to their mind when navigating emotions. Yeah, and to some degree, it's a good idea. But I want to tell you how Disney was formed. All right. So this emphasis on the mind led for this supremacy of the mind. Okay, and the mind, the way it registers stuff of what I see is what I conclude. All right. This leads to many different types of sciences, science itself as we know it, but more specifically empiricism. What I see in material are truths that I can make sense of. You following, yeah? Very simple, very easy. But what then starts to happen is, if I conclude truths based on what I see, and you conclude truths based on what you see, then you have a different truth to me, don't you? Right? Now, this is very similar, because trust me, you and Julie will have a moment where her truth will be a different truth to your truth. And she will say, my narrative was this and his narrative was this. In fact, this foundation is the same foundation to which people say one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And we say, nuh-uh. We say, that guy's a bad guy. Objectively, not subjectively. You see this? So next time you want to go and hold on to your political ideology, first sometimes check where your political ideologies come from, because sometimes they might be erroneous what they result in. Because once you accept one man's terrorist and another man's freedom fighter, you now start to lose objective, absolute truth. Very scary, trying to change the world. What also then happens is, now you start to get this rise of capitalism and all these other things, because the mind concludes material. Material can be brought by money. So this gives birth to industrial revolution and capitalism. And this goes on a super, becomes the thing of the Western world, right? Which you guys may know about through your history lessons on YouTube for 10 minutes. Anyway, now, think of it like this. In that time, during this period, there were human beings just like you and me. Now they were sitting there watching this whole world now conclude that all we are is the mind and matter and make money and take over the world and long live the British Empire and blah blah blah, right? Well, what happened to love at this time? Science now proposes the idea that love is now just material chemicals, right? One of my favorite things to do when, you're speaking to a person who's a non-Muslim, put your hand on their shoulder, especially if you're same gender. You put the hand on their shoulder, you look at them with a smolder, and you say, really, is your love just chemical reactions? And boom, they're just like, la ilaha illallah. Because they can't accept that. The human being cannot accept that this is all we are, because you cannot justify your ruh to just be material and cognitive phenomena. So then, the pursuit of beauty, of love and truth began in the Western world. Very easy, everyone's following, yeah? As they started to look for beauty and love and truth and maybe even God, in a framing that didn't really include feelings, because material and observation doesn't really, it's like you're wearing green, right? Someone says it's Medina green. Chill out, brother, it's just green. In fact, it's not really even green. Green is a color that somebody pulled out. It's actually light refracting of number 0.1%, whatever. Do you get it? This mathematical observation of the world. As a result of that, where does the heart find satisfaction for love and truth and beauty? Objective truth doesn't exist anymore. Love is just chemical reactions or just things that I material experience. And beauty, well, beauty becomes relative now as well. That's why, when they say things like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So therefore, there's like a subjective beauty. What's beautiful to me might not be beautiful to you, for example. And though that's true to a degree, we accept that there is a thing called objective beauty as well. So comb your hair, right? But this is the cool thing now, right? No, you don't get it. You see what's happening there? You see how the problem, because then the person can say, no, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And my people love me like this. Yeah? This type of stuff. Well, actually, there is such a thing as objective beauty, and it's with the Prophet ﷺ, and you might want to learn that. Anyway, they didn't have the answers, the wonderful answers I just gave you, so they ran on this whole discourse. And this desire, where the mind and our rationalism started to take over the whole world, and this is where most of your neo-spirituality circles are linked to, by the way, and again, Disney Channel. Disney Plus. You see, I'm a bit old now. Huh? What happens is this gives birth to this modern phenomena of romanticism that people would look for, and they would say, well, this scarf, you might call this just another pieces of thread that comes together, but this was given to me by one of my wonderful teachers. And because you don't have a regulation of like truth and love and beauty, people started to whip up their own definitions of truth, love and beauty. So what you started to get was these where you were having these material and hedonistic pursuits, there was also now a desire for love and beauty and truth in the material related phenomena. So how can I find happiness? You see, maths doesn't tell you happiness, does it? Beauty, love, truth does. So when I look at what makes me happy, in a world that's related to material, my highest expression of happiness will be what? Material. And in a framing where God is not in the picture anymore, when you take out God out the picture, who's the new God? Yeah, yourself. You become the God itself. Astaghfirullah, like this is what starts to happen. They have these modern shrines, digital modern shrines. Have you seen them? It's called the Instagram profile. I've got one too. Anyway, subhanallah, just beautify your own shrine. A'udhu billah. Just self-worship. These are modern forms of self-worship, unfortunately. Anyway, so what happens is, this human being is now looking for truth and beauty and love in a world that's related to material, and I'm the one who has to be served. Therefore, the conclusion is the most material that I can get will result in the more happiness that I can have. So mathematical searches for transcendental truths are limited by material. More tables, get another table, get 2 more tables, finally tables. This kind of a road starts to appear. This whole thing becomes the beginning of romanticism. But this, I gave nice basic things like tables as an example. There's examples that I could give that wouldn't be not fitting for a mosque, so I'm not going to say them. Got that? That's why certain activities that human beings could do now become the pinnacle of love. How pathetic. Because now love is defined as what I can receive. Got that? It's what can I receive? Now does that remind you of a relationship with Julie? Right? Everybody's just in it for themselves. Whereas a traditional expression of love, Ismail alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, sacrifice. Sacrifice? That's not good for my boundaries. Right? No, but if it's at the cost of myself, I must take care of. You see what's happened here? And that's rooted in secularized love. Godless love. How can you have love without God? Subhanallah. You see what's happened here? Try to explain this. It's quite hard to explain it, but I think I did a decent job of just analyzing. So the secular worldview now promotes self-gratification, the ultimate goal, replacing the spiritual desire of love or the spiritual love. This manifests in many other things. This starts to manifest. So once this idea starts, where do you think it goes? Where do you think this idea of love goes? If you look at the early aristocrats of some of these places, they were actually very sick people, because once you start the pursuit that material exchange can be the highest expression of love, then my most happiness can be the most indulging that I can have. So if you actually track these people, they were very sick people, and they would use religion inversed for these perversions. If you know what I'm talking about, they would use religion inversed for their perversions. That's why when you go back to some of the sources of a lot of the madness that you see, you'll find like this idea of religious figures being involved in these really lewd and lowly activities. You're following what I'm saying, yeah? This has a massive cultural implication, because these people now start to become people that define really what now is love. So where before they would speak about Layla and Majnu, representations of that if that's the love of a human for a human, then what is that of the love of a human being for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's what it originally was, poetry and even music. Now, it was a whole different ball game. It was gratification and just get as many toys as you can and have as much fun as you can. This translated all into media. That's why every person, especially in the 60s, but if you go back earlier, you can go to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and so on. And you will find that these ideas were the same people bringing in more sick and perverted ideas. And a lot of these movements that were taking place, you had so much standardized bad behavior. I'm really using soft terms here because I'm in a mosque. They would standardize bad behavior. So all these people who were producing music and producing movies, they were all fruity. If I could use the word fruity, yeah, they were very fruity. And unfortunately, but what I mean, I don't mean to say that lightly. What I mean is that these people were involved in endless haram. And this endless haram is the ideas in which they created many of these cartoons and movies, and many people grew up on. And Bollywood would be a very much an extension of this. So where people found the stories of Allah and the Anbiya and even like Jesus and whatever religions and all these things, now they were replaced with these new figures of these new characters of love, representing love. So now we ask ourselves, how much did our movies impact our understanding of love? And I'll show you something really interesting. This is why I'll give you two phenomena that you're all familiar with. This is why everybody's a narcissist. They ain't ready for this, are they? I think I need some water as well. Huh? This is why everybody's a narcissist, because everybody loves the idea. We've been trained on so much self-indulging behavior that the moment we get told, Muhammad Isaaq, there's a girl version of you, she'd be perfect for you. And then we go, oh, a girl version of me sounds amazing. What? Right? He's just like, there's a brother out there, mashallah, you guys are just like the same. And people get excited over that because they think so highly of themselves that if it's a male or opposite gender version of me, that's going to be a perfect marriage. Isn't that crazy? Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is what it creates also is this obsession with personal feelings. Right? This personal feelings in the moment that we meet. that if we don't have those if we don't have those incredible feelings, then the person's not the one. Right? Which everybody knows that all feelings are fleeting and will end. So even if the feelings are great at the start, they're gonna go. And when they go, if the relationship is predicated on feelings, when the feelings go, does the relationship go? So there's two more things I'm going to share here. I was going to say one, I'll share two. So first thing is, this is why everybody is impressed with strangers. People have such a good opinion of a stranger because they just project onto the stranger all these other, oh, finally this person understands me. You know, this ma'rifah is what we're looking for, the ma'rifah of Allah, to know God. Yeah. So these are all religious ideas, but now they're in this secular, godless systems, and people are like, I think this guy really gets me, right? And your parents who got you, for 20 years they know you, they left to the side, and Julie, 2 weeks, but she's something, and it's all projection, because you don't know about that person. But the idea that a stranger knows me is so exciting that becomes the standard of love. Isn't that crazy? And we don't even know that happens to us. Subhanallah. And that's why when you get married to them, and then 2 or 3 years later, and they're like, Home Alone, like friggin', just they want to swear, but they can't swear, right? That's one thing that happens. The other thing is, that's why traditionally, when you got married, you didn't just look at the feelings. In fact, the feelings weren't really half the time considered. The only feelings that were considered was the feelings for your parents. Subhanallah. So what was considered was social and practicalities. Social practicalities. So it went like this. You're a farmer, right? So you're the daughter of a farmer. I'm a farmer. You're used to manure as a smile in life. We're gonna reduce 80% of the problems that we're gonna have practically. So let's get married. That's the way it went, right? You didn't have to worry about iPads because whatever you were earning, she was familiar with, etc., etc., etc. Now you didn't have any of those considerations, and the idea of the princess and the street rat, the lady and the tramp. You see, these are not random things, right? Aladdin's whole thing was Aladdin faking that he was a prince, defied Sharia law, and because she couldn't marry the street rat. But the idea of that possibility was so exciting, and that's what people were conditioned on. And this was actually part of the sexual revolution as well, and this created this whole idea of self-gratification that was just linked in materialism and individualism. So what does this do for yourself? First of all, like I said, it's what it does is it creates that vibes are more important than logical conclusions. Got that? The vibes are more important than the logical conclusions. If I don't get the vibe with her, Dad, I can't marry her. Vibe? Right? What is vibes? Right? Why the vibes? Subhanallah, yeah? So, vibes over logical conclusions. If you find yourself in life to be there, you better get out of it. Alright, so that's the first thing you want to write down. That is the first thing, is the problem here is vibes. So experiences, emotions and perspectives, they are driven by the feeling. A strong emphasis on that. And I might not have time to do it, but I could even show you how maybe I'll do this at the end, remind me, you'll like this, is how people have understood their religion of vibes. Isn't that crazy? So when we say, no, alhamdulillah, let's get back to Allah and the Rasul, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we take the same conditioning we took into and we say, yeah, but Sheikh, I don't feel it in Salah. Yeah? We were in California once, right? West Coast. And we were with mashallah, there was a scholar from Mauritania. They just picked him up out of Mauritania and placed him in the middle of California. He lived in the home like he was in California. Allah yarhamuhu. He was a great scholar. We were sitting there, and one of the question came in, and somebody asked the question, Sheikh, how can I feel in Salah? كيف نشعر في صلاة? He goes, كيف تشعر? كيف تشعر? Like, you want to feel? How to feel? Man ant, who are you that you should be feeling in Salah? You're an abd, that's God. Simple, pray. I'm just offering a perspective. I'm not saying, as Allama Iqbal said it, sajda ishq ho to ibadat mein maza aata hai. And that if you have a sajda where there's love, that's when you have maza in the ibadah. That's when you have the lazza, the experience in the ibadah. Khali sajdon mein to dunya hi basti hai. He says in empty prostrations, there's just the dunya is found. Iqbal, be careful that your prostrations don't make you a kafir. To jukta kahin ho rahe or sochta kahin ho rahe, because you put your head down here, but really your mind's elsewhere. That your sajdas to God may make you a kafir because you're thinking about something else the whole time. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? Okay, have you time? Okay, thank you. Nobody. So the other thing is it creates a mentality that's obsessed with extremes. Extreme sweets, extreme sports. Have you ever noticed how many extreme sweets? You guys have them, right? North America, those little human being things, the fizzy ones. And they're all extreme. How does that make sense? Have you noticed some of these sweets? Oh, the standard is extreme. That's not it. That doesn't make sense. You see how problematic that is. You have extreme sports. There's a whole genre of extreme sports that do really crazy stuff to get what? The feeling. Subhanallah, that the existence. So before where Descartes said cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, the modern mantra as the response in romanticism is I feel therefore I am. Maybe even, because now our modern feelings are linked with our phones, we may say I post therefore I am. And how many of us have been somewhere and taken a picture of the food and felt a little bit satiated? How does that make sense? I took a picture of the food. I didn't even eat the food, but somehow I feel like I accomplished my mission. Subhanallah, right? There you go. Subhanallah. So imagine what happens with the marriage. Let's live it for the shot. You see that? You see how that works? We didn't actually get married, but let's throw parties about getting married. But we have nothing to celebrate because we didn't even survive for long. Subhanallah. Okay, the third thing. There's a few more here. I'm okay with time. How am I doing with time? We have time, okay. You sure, yeah? You're not just feeling the vibes, are you? No, I'm joking. Okay. Allah bless you, brother. So, what it also does is when you become so self-obsessed and you are trained upon the vibes and the feelings, the focus of adherence to principles now gets relegated. Do you catch that? This is very important. Brothers, I want you to really listen to this, okay? Because you have a bit more responsibility. You have your own responsibilities, but last time I checked, because I'm not a woman, I can't talk about women. Okay. All right. So look, if I prioritize feelings just in my life, if I've been raised upon this way of feelings, I see somebody, violence come out, well, hey, right? I don't like this is the Gen Z are really interesting because they can't even hold jobs properly. You know how quickly they lose jobs? They're just like, yeah, just bye. They're very fascinating, you know. Millennials like they bought into, you know, the get the degree and get the job. And the Gen Z look at them, they're like, no, thank you. But there's such a lack of adherence to principles that what then happens is, so the feelings are prioritized, principles are reduced, and what does that conclude? A irresponsible person. And nobody can then handle responsibilities. And what that means is nobody can handle being responsible for the problem creating this ultra-sensitive being. I'm triggered right now. Well, I'm sorry, Cinderella, but if the shoe fits... No, I'm joking. Or am I? Isn't it amazing? You see how this has created our whole psyche? Are you guys finding this beneficial? For me, this is boom. You know, you realize so many ways you're going wrong in life. And maybe, if you're not married, it was for this moment. You can learn this and then you'll get married now. Okay? Because if you went into marriage with this, you'd be like your cousin. No, I'm joking. All right. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. May Allah protect everybody's lives and personal understandings of themselves. But subhanAllah, what it then concludes is, as you look in the mirror and you ask yourself, am I feeling myself today? Isn't that crazy? These ideas, am I feeling the source today? And these become metrics and measurements for for just life, how you carry yourself. Subhanallah. And then what that does is, if my principles are a lack of responsibility, watch this, then where does religion fit in all of this? If religion just gives me responsibilities and no vibes, then no thank you to your religion. Which is why you see certain variations of Islam globally that focused on the principles and not on the tasawwuf, feelings. You'll find that those Islamic frameworks crumble very quick, and we have the parties that we have in our holy lands. You got that? Because there's such an emphasis, and this is the same thing within our own homes, within our own selves. So religion itself starts to get attacked. The other thing, another big common phenomenon, is this obsession with authenticity. Be your authentic self. Yes. Yeah. These type of framings, this modern fixation of preference, even sexual preference, you know, this idea of, are you straight? As if you have to qualify that within like your identity. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, the identity is linked to the preference of activities. Like in your bio, things like this modern fixation of preference and orientation because of extreme individualism and materialism, me using nice words. Okay. What also then happens is a ridiculous obsession of authenticity, and if I cannot be my authentic self, then that which does not allow me to be is bad. So before I said to you that truth was subjective. Well, if truth is subjective, we have different moral frameworks. Morally, you think this country's right, morally I think this country's right, and that's called secular politics, right? in the ethical, we could argue ethically who's the big baddie, right? But if you take this in the context of of the relationship, what that concludes is not just your observations, but also your feelings and my feelings. Therefore, meaning, if I feel this is good, and you do not allow me to present this part of good, then, and I call this good, and you don't allow me, and by some framing you say this is not good, then what, if I'm fully driven by my feelings, what do I conclude then? You not allowing me to wear my scarf, you've done now bad to me. It's scary, isn't it? Because when that happens, then I start to say things like, so not allowing me to be is oppressive. What? Huh? What just happened? That just because I didn't let you say a particular word or share what you wanted to in this moment or be your authentic self, yeah? Because I didn't allow that for a moment, now I've oppressed you? This is the philosophical foundations of batil, nonsense, okay, falsehood, and romantic ideals. I think we're 5 minutes left, is it? Yeah, I think it's 5 minutes. 10 minutes. I need to be principled with this, brothers. 10 minutes. Okay, I need to be, stay with me. Give me the 5-minute signal as well, because I don't want to just go off the vibes. I think we're having a good time. Which is also important then, because if you're going to do da'wah, if your da'wah doesn't include vibes, people won't like it. You got that, yeah? That's why we got a media team here. To feed TikTok with this, so the animal farm can create more. Okay, let's move on. And I'm not joking when I say these references. I just say with a slight smile so you feel kind of happy, but I know you want to cry. So do I. So then what? So then this obsession that if I can be my authentic self in a relationship and I can be all of me with my flaws, and you don't have anything to say about it, then that's a good thing. And if you say anything about my flaws, then you have oppressed me and I'm leaving. What? And that's scary. May Allah save us from the madness of these extreme Dajjalic worldviews. Okay, and I'm not going to be speaking too much about Dajjal today, but as a nutshell, remember Dajjal, he will show you water as fire and fire as water. So his whole gig is flipping and inverting truths. He wants to invert truth. So you follow falsehood as if it's a truth, and stay away from and look at truth as falsehood. That's what he wants to do. He wants men to be women and women to be men. He wants to just invert. If he can invert that thing, that's good enough. He doesn't say to join me and let's take over the world with that one-eyed caps. No, what he wants to do is he wants to invert principles. So the guys are like, hold me. And she's like, yeah, all right, I'll hold you. What? Just after she does her deadlifts. Yeah, I'm going to be done at 8 o'clock. After work, I'll go do my deadlifts and then I'll come pick you up. And he's like, oh, subhanallah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan. This is why you got to read Surah Kahf on Fridays to save you from this. Again, I'm not against deadlifts, people. If you've hardcore training, you got your Instagram page, you got more than 5K, just stick with it. If you got less than 5K, give up. No, joking. All right. All right. I'm just keeping it light. Please don't take offense. I know I'm navigating very dangerous, sensitive waters. And then modern influences getting navigated. So that's the last bit here, is avoiding, just avoid extreme perspectives, right? So the hadith that we mentioned, the first that we mentioned was to keep the balance. The second one is, the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you are those who are best to their families, right? What best to families means doesn't mean that she is always happy, because she will never be happy. Nobody will be happy. Being best to somebody is not defined by vibes. Being best to somebody is not defined by feelings. Is that clear, everybody? Can we just help the whole world with this thing alone? This help a lot of people. Just because you don't feel good doesn't mean the person's bad. Are we okay with that, everybody? Yeah, do you see how powerful this is? This is a game changer for people, because brother, people are making all sorts of decisions simply because they feel that they are not feeling the way they want to feel. Hey, just deep that for a second. So taking a balanced approach, right? Focusing on principles that take care of feelings, but give yourself to the principle, not the metric of the other's feelings, because if you live for anybody's feelings, you will go crazy. Yes or no? Because the heart of the other person changes. The Prophet ﷺ said the heart of a believer, the heart of the insan boils over like a boiling pot, constantly boiling, just constantly changes. Because they're huduth, they're temporal creatures. Temporality means change. That's why you never want to give yourself to anything temporal. Because if you give yourself to ever-changing goalposts, it's tiring. So you want to give yourself to consistency. So you want to do for the person, lillah. Right? You do for the person for Allah's sake. The hukuk, the principles, which then may start to say, maybe I look at social, practical principles, because if those things are not met, then love might not be enough. Right? And when we say love here, we use it more as the noun of love, the vibes and feelings, rather than the verb of love. The verb of love is very different, isn't it? The verb of love includes sacrifice. In today's time, if you say to anybody sacrifice, what do they say? I can't because of my mental health. Anyway, that's navigate it at your own, according to your own situations. I'm not saying that stay in any difficult, but I would say if anyone's a criminal, call the police, right? Rather than writing a Facebook status. Anyway, so the idea is focus on the hukuk. If you go into the relationship without knowing the hukuk, then what's going to carry the situation? Not just the hukuk, taqwa. For example, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we put between them, that we've created with them, mawadda and rahma. You know why mawadda and rahma are mentioned? One of the reasons. What does mawadda do? Mawadda does is when you like somebody, you start to elevate them and project onto them all this wonderful stuff. That's called the first 2 years of marriage. Yeah, this person becomes amazing. And why did Allah mention rahmah? Because when it crashes, now you have to have rahmah to deal with the fact that this person isn't what you made them out to be in your head. Interesting. So you gotta have mawadda, because that's the vibes, and rahmah, which is the principle. Because if you don't have rahmah and just want to seek mawadda, then you will be in trouble. Because you gotta learn to forgive insan, as they say, err is to be human, to forgive divine. Right? That's rahim and rahmah. Of course, whatever you did in your life, whatever based on your situations, you did it as best. So don't go into like, oh, what could I have done? Repeat after me the wonderful dua affirmation of the Prophet ﷺ. He would read, "Ma sha Allahu kana wa ma lam yasha lam yakun." Right? What Allah has willed has happened. What Allah did not will did not happen. You don't need to say Hakuna Matata. Just say Ma sha Allahu kana. What Allah willed happened. Wa ma lam yasha lam yakun. What He did not will did not happen. And move on with your life. Don't get too caught up into those things. And then balancing affection and responsibility. The first thing I spoke about was mukallaf, being a mukallaf person. Become responsible. Look at what the responsibilities are, and to understand, to love for Allah's sake and not just for the person's sake alone. I think the time is short, so I will inshallah stay after the prayer for any questions, inshallah. So we will stay for that if any of you feel like you want to remain and you can handle any more. I think you can handle no more. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْهِ. And I just talked to myself the whole time. Inshallah, if there was any khair, it was from my teachers and my parents. And if there was anything bad, it was most certainly from myself and Disney Channel and Shaitan. Assalamu alaikum, inshallah.